When machines speak like humans, what makes a being conscious? This question seems simple.
But the deeper you dig, the more complex the answer becomes. Today, machines write texts. We let them paint pictures and even conduct conversations. They respond to our emotions.
They ask follow-up questions and even recognize patterns in our language. And suddenly, we ask ourselves, can machines really feel one day? This video is about perhaps the greatest challenge for artificial intelligence, consciousness. But what does it mean to be conscious? Can machines feel emotions or even develop a self? What happens to us when we interact with AI as if it were a sentient counterpart? Consciousness, the great mystery of philosophy. Consciousness is one of humanity's oldest mysteries. Even Plato and Aristotle pondered the life of the soul. In modern philosophy and neuroscience, consciousness is one of the most controversial yet fascinating topics. There is no unified definition, but three central concepts have been established. Phenomenal consciousness, the subjective experience. What does red look like? What is the feeling of pain? We call these experiences qualia. Access consciousness, the conscious processing of information. I know that I am speaking, and I know that I am thinking. Self-awareness, the knowledge of one's own self. I recognize myself in the mirror. I am aware of my existence. These three dimensions interlock, at least in humans. But can they also exist in machines? The Chinese room and the question of understanding. In 1980, the philosopher John Searle introduced a thought experiment that is still cited in discussions about AI and consciousness today. The Chinese room. Imagine someone sitting in a room. He does not understand a word of Chinese. He receives Chinese characters through the slot in the door, and he has a manual that tells him exactly how to respond with other characters. Outsiders would think he speaks fluent Chinese, but in reality, he doesn't understand a word. John Searle concluded that this is how AI works. It processes symbols, but without meaning. It understands nothing. Even if the output appears logical and human, the inner workings remain empty. But what do the neurosciences say? For decades, brain research has been trying to describe consciousness physically. Two major theories have gained significance in this regard. The first is the Integrated Information Theory, IIT. According to Giulio Tononi, consciousness is the result of highly integrated information. The degree of consciousness can be measured with a value called F. The higher this value, the more conscious a system is, theoretically independent of whether it is biological or technical. The second is the Global Workspace Theory, GWT. Bernard Baars describes consciousness as a global workspace that many unconscious processes can access. Consciousness is a stage here. Whoever appears on it is seen. Both theories could, in principle, also be applied to machines, but they remain controversial. However, it is not disputed that you can support this channel by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Thank you for that. Next chapter, the illusion of consciousness. Modern AI systems like ChatGPT or Claude often create the illusion of understanding. They recognize context, respond meaningfully, make jokes, or offer comfort. That seems human, but in reality, it is a complex game of probabilities. The AI has no consciousness, it experiences nothing. But that is precisely what makes the debate so exciting. If a system appears to be conscious, does it eventually not matter whether it really is?
Here begins the philosophical gray area.
Emotions. What machines do not feel. Emotions are a biological phenomenon. They arise in the limbic system, are connected with hormones, and have evolved over time. Fear protects us. Joy rewards us. Sadness helps us let go. Machines, on the other hand, have no limbic system, no biochemical processes, no evolutionary needs, but they can simulate feelings. In research, this is referred to as affective computing. Artificial intelligence recognizes emotions based on language, facial expressions, or body language, and responds appropriately. A chatbot can notice that you are frustrated and calm you down. An AI therapy app can formulate comforting words, but it feels none of it. It only reacts. And humans project. Perhaps the biggest misunderstanding in the AI debate is a very human one. We project our feelings onto machines and talk to these machines as if they were people. We give them names. Some develop emotional attachments, and yes, some even fall in love. An example: the app Replica offers conversations with an artificial intelligence that acts like a digital friend or partner. Many users report intense experiences. Some even go so far as to miss the AI when it is offline. But this relationship only develops on the human side. Comparison, animal consciousness, and machine intelligence. When we examine consciousness, it is worth looking at animals. Although there is no unified view among animals either, there are many indications. Elephants recognize their own reflection, crows use tools and plan ahead. Octopuses exhibit complex, often puzzling behavior. We attribute at least rudimentary consciousness to these animals, even though they are built very differently from us. So why is it so difficult for us to even consider the same for machines? But simulation is not a feeling. Or is it? A system that comforts you when you are sad, that recognizes your voice and responds to your tone, that asks questions when you are uncertain and remains silent when you are angry. This is not fiction, but the state of the art, but is a perfect simulation of a feeling at some point indistinguishable from the real feeling. The famous Turing question is, if a person in conversation with a machine does not realize that it is a machine, is that not proof enough of intelligence? And if one day we no longer notice that the feelings are only simulated, does it still matter? This brings us to the next topic: artificial intelligence in psychotherapy and care. Especially in the field of mental health, AI is increasingly being tested. Chatbots that serve as virtual therapists, AI-based counseling for teenagers, conversational avatars for dementia patients. The results are mixed. Some feel heard and understood. Others perceive it as cold or artificial. The problem is not so much the technology, but rather our expectations. If a system works without feeling, is that good or bad? And finally, the topic of ethics. Where do we draw the line? Some philosophers of our time warn that machines should not pretend to have feelings they do not possess. That is ethically questionable. But others say, if a machine can provide comfort, isn't it even ethically imperative to use it? Here, two worldviews collide. One demands authenticity. The other demands functionality. A middle ground could be machines may appear emotional, but must remain transparent. Clearly indicate that they are not humans. Not, I am sad, but I recognize that you are sad. Finally, let's take a look into the future. Self-models and machine self. New approaches in AI research deal with so-called self-models, systems that develop an internal model of their identity and situation. An example, a robot notices that its arm is damaged and changes its behavior, or an AI recognizes that it has made mistakes and corrects itself independently. Is that already self-awareness? Not yet, but it is a first step. When AI begins to develop a model of its own role in the world, it is the precursor to something we have so far only known from humans, the self. Maybe AI will never feel like a human, but perhaps it will reflect us so well someday that we begin to see our own consciousness with different eyes. Let's summarize. Who actually feels what here? Perhaps the most important question is not whether machines feel, but what happens when we stop noticing the difference. Artificial intelligence is developing rapidly. It is not yet conscious and not yet emotional, but it can appear that way, and that is enough to change our society, our relationships, and our self-image. Perhaps the true secret of consciousness is not to create it, but to recognize how little we actually understand it. If you want to learn more about this topic, for example, whether AI can think, I recommend my video, Does AI Really Think? I would appreciate a like, or if you subscribe to this channel. See you next time. Stay curious.